Hello everyone, and welcome to the final update for Let's Play Prototype. Life goes on in New York City, and this is where we're actually dropped off whenever we load up a game and we have a complete story mode done. There's even some new signs on this area of Times Square, like the "Are you immune? Give blood." They don't really touch on immunities, and tanks still don't know when things are done. Mindlessly aiming everywhere. But anyway, last video, we achieved all platinums in all of the events, and the game pretty much said that you are done. You are a master, and you have completed 100% of the game, pretty much. However, I still wasn't done with this game, which leads us to the Radical Roundup. What is the Radical Roundup, you might say? Something special that the game doesn't explicitly tell you about. As you can see, we have all of the platinums in every single event, but you can kind of notice that with every single one of the events that I've done previously that I've been going for times and scores much higher than the platinum requirement. Before I go any further, let's check out the logs screen, because I haven't went in here. Here you can look at your main objective, which is kind of pointless. Also, you can look at all of the hints that you've collected throughout the game, all 50 of them, and really the tutorials are not really that helpful either. But anyway, in the events, there's actually a 5th and final reward grade. And here they are. These are the radical times for the game. Where did these radical times come from? Well, they actually come from, apparently, the official strategy guide for the game. They document this, so you'll actually have to get the book in order to find out what these scores are, or go online. That is how I've been trying to go for such ridiculous glide requirements. Except of course, I didn't actually grade Cloverleaf, because I didn't actually get the requirement. What reward do you get for all of this? Pretty much nothing other than bragging rights. And a lot of people have pretty much been saying that this is a requirement that is nigh impossible. And, well, I'm here to show you that almost all of them are doable. Except for some of them, because, well, there's some of them that are going to be left platinum because I'm not as good as I can be. So this roundup is going to work pretty much the same as the Platinum Roundup, revisiting a bunch of events, specifically the ones that don't have the R next to them. Except for a couple of them, of course. We're going to be skipping the first 2 movement events, because we're going to go in the same order of category. Because unfortunately, eavesdropping and point-to-point, I can't get any faster on them. And of course, consume events, we can't really do anything with them because they're just kind of on their own. So the first event that we're going to be doing in order to get faster is Tower of Babel. And it's also easier in order to find where they are on the map when they're all the same color, when you're able to use the mark inside of the event screen. Getting radical times is difficult. There's no bones about that. But really, there's not a lot of ways, and thanks, game, for telling me that I have upgrades available. Even at the end of the game, it still decides to pull that stuff off. Heck, it probably would have given me the throwing tutorial again if it really wanted to. So getting radical times is difficult, but it's not really that difficult as long as you keep practicing for it. In terms of upgrades, you have to pretty much be at max for every single upgrade that is going to be necessary in order to be the fastest that you can be. But of course, that's not enough. You also have to be good. You have to have some skill involved. The radical time for this one was 18 seconds. And that means we're totally rad! Yeah, fortunately, because the times are not actually shown in-game, you're not recognized for them, you don't actually get a very specific, special kind of radical time for it. So at least you can get something like this, you could just give it to yourself. So that's good and done, and now we have another radical score. Next up is going to be Among the Clouds. Right down there. I kinda didn't like this air conditioner all the way here, but I wanted to see if I could actually hit this building. Bonk. Alright, good to go. I just got the platinum requirement for this one too. It doesn't matter if you beat it or beat a time or not. If you match the requirement, you're still given the medal. So that is at least a good sign. So it didn't necessarily mean that I had to beat the radical times. It just meant that I had to match them. Because Among the Clouds is a bit of a difficult one because you have to keep a good horizontal distance going on. The movement category and the glide category are especially difficult because you're not given a lot of ways in order to exploit things, and also you don't have a lot of skills to back up on. So this did take a couple of tries in order to actually get properly done, because some ways are a bit unorthodox in order to actually get a bit quicker. So you're going to have to do some experimentation if you really want to get quick. Totally rad. Is there any better medal than this? I kind of disagree. The only thing I could add, really, is that I could put a killer guitar solo on it. I thought that was overkill, though. You can do it for yourself. Alright, 2 more to go for the movement category, and I did plan on doing all of them, but of course there are some of them I'm going to be missing. So Rooftop Runner is going to be our next up. This event is just plain fun in order to actually do really well and be really quick. Because once you have pattern down for this one, all you really need to do is have the skill necessary in order to make the quick corners. You almost get into a bit of like a state of mind where everything just kind of flows together and everything's smooth, and then you can just do it. There are some waypoints that can slip you up on where the location is, but once you have those down, or at least get lucky on those, then you can get a good score of 28 seconds. Now, these radical times, there's not a lot of information about them other than looking into the strategy guide, but from what I could gather about what these radical times actually are, is that they are the developer times for the game. So these are the dev times. The best scores that the developers of the game could deliver to the game themselves. I'm hearing a hunter. Oh, there he is. Hi, buddy. Let's get out of the way of that and continue on with the last of the movement category that I was able to get a radical on. Free running, which is all the way back down at Red Crown Command. Incoming! The main issue with this one, and all of the military just appear because that's how this place works. If I ran up to them, they'd probably just zip away. Yeah, I find this one weird that it's really... This is the one that has an alert kind of tied to it all the time, and I think I bounced off that guy's head. That was pretty great. Now, in terms of free running and actually getting a little bit quicker on it in order to get the radical time, it's actually not that difficult out of all of them. If you have the maximum and you kind of have a general idea, you don't have to be perfect with it either. You just have to be alright with the movement system, then you should be able to get really close to it. And that's kind of how I judged being able to get the times for this. If I was really close to it and knew where I was able to cut some time off, whether like a second or two, then I would continue going for it, and eventually I would get the time that was good. There's the last one. There we go. And bam! There we go. 101. Almost 102, but still good enough for the radical time. Unfortunately, with eavesdropping and point-to-point, is that I know kind of the idea of where I'm able to cut off that second to, well, actually 4 seconds for eavesdropping. But of course, like I said before in the last video, I'm not really that great at doing it, so there is going to be some snags. And you'll see where, at the end, which events that I was not able to beat for the radical times. Something caught my eye over here, too. The game may be over and the infection is kind of still around, but I've noticed these 3 buses over here. And it just got me thinking of, like, a school trip going on. Except, traffic is still terrible. Except nobody's in the buses, so that kind of debunked my myth, except for the driver, who is exactly the same as every other male driver in the city. Low polygon and all that. And that is all for the movement events. All that I was actually able to do. And now we can move on to the kill events. There wasn't a lot that I actually had to get radical, actually. And of course, we're going back to the earlier ones, starting with disembowelment. We covered dismemberment in the previous video, and actually I got the radical time for that in the previous video. But now it's time to do the military equivalent of it. The main issue I have with this event is, of course, clustering, because, well, it's actually not that bad in terms of how military appear in this event. is just getting them to appear really close to you, because you actually have to make use of the direction that the camera is facing. A lot of the time, a military will appear behind you or just off the screen, so you gotta have to use that to your advantage. And of course, you kill a lot of guys really close together, so when you're getting fired at constantly, you're not in fear of dying, because you're going to be using every second in order to actually get the time that you want. If you're able to get military to appear back and forth between one of these paths, because that is going to help you immensely. And with that, you should get a wonderful time to beat the radical time. 45 is just enough. I think the radical time off the top of my head is 44. But we'll confirm that once we look at all of the events again. Totally rad! I should do that more often. No, I shouldn't. I'm lying. Now the next one that we have to go to is another early one, Infected Patrol. To be honest, I don't know why I left Infected Patrol till now, because I could have got the radical time back when I first had it. And you can kind of see, like, Joey's up there. It kind of reminds me of the Macy's, actually, in New York. But I guess they didn't have the rights to use the actual name. Freaking helicopters. Anyway, so I think the reason why I didn't actually get the radical score, which I think is 444 for this one, is because I wasn't really using the infected strategy that I keep repeating over and over in these videos, because it was really early on that this one showed up. And that is to make use of where infected spawn. You're also given a lot of time with this one, and it's kind of a reason why, in terms of kill events, there's so few that I actually have to get radical times for. Because when using specific weapons and being very limited as to abilities and powers that you have to use, because you're either using tanks or helicopters or weapons, that's all you have. So my mentality was just to go straight for the radical time and get that done and over with, so I didn't have to return to it ever again. It kind of makes sense. Infected giants just come at you, and also the strategy of getting infected that are surrounded by cars that are able to be exploded. Still use that strategy too, because that'll just get you the extra points that you may need within the last couple seconds of the event before it ends. So just take care that you're able to do that as well. There we have it, 464. So much infected points. So many points it's totally rad, I guess you could say. Except not really. It's a cool thing. I should have used... Nah, I like this one too much. There wasn't a lot of radical things that I could have put on top of the medal. So one last one I actually have to do for the kill event, I believe. And that is Grind the Bones. Which, if you remember, is the Hammer Fist event, which is actually really close by. This area actually has a bunch of events that are really close by. And it's all the way back to the Gentech building. Looking all nice and pristine. Except for the hole in the wall that's kind of still there. And semi-boarded up with goo. But yeah, Grind the Bones is the one with the Hammer Fist power-up that we're dealing with infected targets. There really isn't a reason why I didn't do this earlier either, because in terms of this event, a lot of the enemies are really close together. So even if I did have specific power-ups, like the hammer toss or like the elbow drop, they just kind of would have been too slow, and in terms of the hammer toss, even though it is the quickest ability, out of the actual abilities that aren't the standard attack, it's too inaccurate for taking down enemies like this. So you pretty much could have done this event with the standard attack. You just have to remember that because the Hammer Fist is so slow, you have to constantly switch clusters really quickly. Even though you actually haven't killed every enemy in a cluster, it doesn't matter because you're actually going to be wasting precious time in order to actually go after other guys. And of course the marked infected are just going to come after you anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Grunt. I believe the radical score for this one was 160. So you're not given a lot of time, but it is effective once you're able to practice enough at using the Hammer Fist, and your score is good enough too. And so the hunter disappears, but those were twin infected. Anyway, it's time for a taxi ride, because apparently taxis just cannot stop not being here. To Adventure Taxi! Fine. Apparently you're a good driver. I'm not gonna just plow over everything. But anyway, that is all of the kill events. So now we can go back to the war events. If I can find the specific one that I want to go to. There we go. It's the first war event, which was Enemy of My Enemy. Hazardous material. Oh. All the poison just went everywhere. This construction site will never be finished. I'm just noticing that. Never ever. Not with all of this mess going on. And you know, me being here. It's been a long time since we've done Enemy of My Enemy. And a hunter actually helps us start with the same strategy that we're going to be using like we did with Power to the People. It's just kind of the quickest way of getting rid of the infantry, especially when they're so spaced out like this, like the missile launchers perched on top of the rooftops. It's the best way in order to actually get rid of them, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Of course, with the tanks over here, they're actually the really piddly little tanks, so air slices are just kind of the way to go. And I guess the only way of making it any faster in order to use the air slice is to not jump as high, but in terms of having maximum height, sometimes you just can't avoid it. sometimes you don't even have to worry about the tanks because they're so weak. These versions, that the hunters will just swipe at them and take them down. So really your main guys that you're supposed to be taking down for the infected side are the military. Infantries anyways. Especially these ones on the rooftops, because sometimes you can forget them easily enough. And then you can focus on the tanks yourself. Just try to go for the ones that aren't actually being gone after by hunters. Because it kind of wastes your time. Oh god, legs in the air. And there we have it. That is what our original time was 1:52, so you're able to do it 20 seconds faster. That's totally rad. Legs. Alright. Alright, so one final war event that I was able to complete. Even though there were technically 3, there's one I'm just not able to do. So, rounding up the Radical Roundup is Stairway. It's kind of appropriate that Stairway is the last one to do, simply because it's a stairway to victory. Except it's still filled with gunshots and whatnot. And a rib cage. Good. The cars and traffic still trying to do what it's doing. Jesus. This one is a bit of an annoyance to actually pull off, because you have a mix of the evolved infected and the hunters everywhere. The quickest way of doing it is, of course, to use the Devastators, but like I said before, it's kind of risky to actually use it, because the military is in such close proximity that you're going to be taking out a lot of the military in addition to taking out the infected. Also, don't go nuts using the Devastators, because you kind of want to save some for a little bit later in the fight, and also you want to wait for these hunters to get off of the roofs of the buildings and down to your level, so you can actually hit them and get rid of a bunch of the enemies all at once. In terms of mobility as well, I've tried doing this with the armor just because to save critical mass state, but it didn't really work as well because you kind of lose the dive roll ability, which is very helpful. So the shield is the best way in order to lose the least amount of critical mass. Now we can see down there that we have the leader hunters, and to taking out the leader hunters really quickly and not annoying, the best combination, and pretty much the combination you should be using, is a mix of air critical mass Devastator, followed up immediately by an air slice, and it will take it down in 2 hits. That'll get rid of it easy as pie, and then you can just go ahead and get rid of the remaining guys. Or the military can do it for you. There's been numerous times that I've been caught up by not having any sort of critical mass in order to get rid of the leaders, and that has just ruined my time overall, and unfortunately it kind of almost ruined my chances of being totally rad with this event. But I was able to do it, and it was great to totally wrap this up. So with that, that is our Radical Roundup, and that is me saying, forget the developers, because this is kind of what it shows to be the prototype master. So let's walk away coolly and with the blade. Except for this guy. Everything is ruined. He didn't even die. Now he did. Bye, torso. Over the hill. So yeah, there we have it. Those are all of the events that I was able to do and actually bring up to Radical State. So let's look at the times and the stuff that I wasn't able to do. Wasn't able to do the eavesdropping and point-to-point in the movement, simply because I wasn't able to be fast enough and skilled enough in order to break it down by 4 seconds and 1 second, respectively. Technically, I should have all of the glides, but I'm gonna be fair and say that Cloverleaf is not something in my reach, just because of the annoyance of actually being able to get it. But the kill events, I was able to get all of them. Raid is probably the one that is well far out of my reach, because I need to be about half a minute faster, and because of the structure of that event, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'd love to see someone be able to try to do it, though. See how long it actually takes them, because some of these just took way too long in order to actually do. So with that done, and that's actually 53 events, and I was able to finish 49 of them, which is a great turnout. 100%ing the Web of Intrigue. All of the upgrades purchased minus the Adrenaline Surge, which I pretty much got at this point. And let's look at the final statistics, because this has been kind of looming over. Yes, I played for a lot. That's actually not an accurate amount of time played. It's actually a lot more than that, because you have to factor in replaying missions, other loads, and also crashes. The missions without alert is kind of a good statistic to track, because it's kind of a challenge to you to see how many you're able to do. You're not going to be able to get all of them, because that is nigh impossible, because sometimes at the end of the mission you will just be alerted because you have to run away from the military. And the amount of stuff that's being tracked here is ridiculous, and kind of cool at the same time. I kind of wish there was more uses of the thermobaric tank, though, because that's where you're going to be having zeros in terms of your statistics, because you only hijack one thermobaric tank throughout the entire thing, and that's when consuming Taggart. There's no other ones in operation. The only thing that's missing out of the statistics screen is the military expenditure, which I find odd, seeing as you're only able to actually look at it at the end of a mission, and when you're in the post-game, you're not able to see that, even though you get more operation reports, and that's added to it. So that's something I don't get. Now there's one last thing we have to do, and that is what people remember Prototype for. Standing on top of the Empire State Building as your grandpa. This is a pretty good shot, actually. The Empire State Building as your grandpa, doing one last thing to end it all off. And that is flying over the city and landing on someone's face, unknowingly. It's also Grandpa's birthday, just so you know. So, happy birthday! Yes! So, that has been Let's Play Prototype, so I will see you all again for something I do next. Hold on, what's up there? Actually, you know what? There's something actually better than just doing all that I just said. And it's, pretty much all of the other glitches that you can kind of pull off with this game. Clinging to walls apparently makes an alert happen, too. Thought it was gonna make this cool, but no, the military has to be everywhere that I have to be. But anyway, I think this is a good place to leave off. Someone swimming inside a sign. Hey, it's Grandpa! Oh, he's in a sign too, swimming in a sign. So anyway, thank you everyone for watching Let's Play Prototype. This has been a lot of fun, and I think this guy pretty much speaks for itself in terms of the enjoyment that I got out of this game. If you can, I highly recommend playing this game because it's different for every person who ever plays it. And hopefully, when guns aren't firing everywhere, I'll see you all for the next game that I do. So, goodbye from me, this has been Orylen, and this has been Grandpa and Swimming Grandpa. Take care, everyone. Don't worry, he eventually gets out.